Hi, here on Simbo Peep Shit today, and I'm gonna play Simple Things by Miguel because I think it's a really sweet song about appreciating the little things in a partner that aren't material, they're more character traits. And also, I think the concept applies to broader relationships as well, outside of just intimate ones. So it's a fairly simple song. There are only three chords to it. So I'm going to try it on stereo piano and just give it a go and jam along, and we'll see how it goes. So come along for the ride. Now, I'm not sure how this is going to go because it looks like there might be more notes on the sheet in the intro than is actually in the song. So we're just going to try it and see. Yeah, see, I don't have an intro. Oh, because I'm playing the remix in my headphones, that's why. First of all, Miguel is not talked about near enough when it comes to modern era male vocalists. His repertoire of love songs alone could speak to that. Oh, that's fast. That's really fast. I like the versatility he has. His style kind of reminds me of Prince, and I love it. Simple Things isn't actually my favorite Miguel love song, but I think it perfectly captures what love can look like on a day-to-day basis, and focuses more on qualities and characteristics rather than material things. My tastes in what I'm looking for have changed over the years. There are men from my past that are, on paper, quote unquote good guys and have a lot going for them, but I've learned that that doesn't necessarily make them a great match. Long term isn't sustainable or happy without a similar core value system. Material things don't embody that. At the end of the day, everyone has pieces missing and we're all broken in some capacity. Okay, so the version that I'm playing the tab for is different than the version that I'm listening to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play the actual version in my headphones that matches this tab. So what I was listening to was the remix because the remix is the default version I listen to of this song because I just really love it. But the original version is a little bit slower and it does match this a lot better. So I'm going to switch it over in the headphones and I'm going to try it again. So come along for the ride. It took a long time for me to realize I didn't want someone who was just willing to sit there and tolerate me as I was. What I really wanted was someone to tell me I was beautifully broken. I want you to win my heart. Someone true. And would sit there with me, handing me the broken pieces of myself. Lay with me, babe. Laugh with me, babe. I just want the simple things. While I sat there and tried to glue myself back together. In turn, I'd do the same. Sounds to me like it could be a beautiful mosaic. Life can be totally unpredictable, and some things you just can't plan for, because you can't foresee them. The looks, the house, the car can come and go. Building a relationship that is not solely based on titles, how much money they make, how things look in pictures, what other people have to say, puts it in a better position for longevity, like a happy one. Even if things get rough, it's easier to withstand because there's some depth to it. Not to say the situations themselves would be easy, but having that depth gives it a more solid foundation. For nearly a decade, I pined for a man who treated me awful because on paper, he was everything I wanted, or thought I wanted for the time. He had a good job, nice cars, a house, loved talking about money and flashing fancy things. I thought he was confident and ambitious. I don't need a debutante, just be a tough act to follow. They seemed too positive to be red flags, but the red flags weren't the things themselves. It was how much importance he put on them. Kind of felt glamorous at first, and then it kind of felt overly obsessive on just trivial stuff. But I was also young. I swear every time I was trying to have a serious conversation with the guy, he would flash his watch at me. I want you to win In my 20s, it was exciting. It felt like worth the wait for him to figure his shit out and build up his career and do his traveling and stuff. In my 30s, I started to lose a lot of interest. That's the funny thing about time, is the before and after of it all. I just want you. By the end of it, I was annoyed. He was sick, he was miserable, and he didn't want to change. I had wasted a lot of time, got more self-worth, and I was done with the blatant level of disrespect I was being shown. We were getting old, and if we were gonna do it, this would have been the time to do it. To give it a serious chance at least. During the pandemic, I waited months for him to come home because he said that he was. I didn't even get a real date out of it. Down the line, a couple bouts of being in and out of each other's lives later, I found out he traveled cross country for a girl he hadn't heard from in 20 years just to try things out. Then came back to tell me that it didn't work out. Like I was supposed to be happy he returned and not pissed he flew across country for someone else. Someone real and someone true. But I had been here for him nearly 10 years, and I just wanted a movie night at the drive-in that I never got. He has absolutely no idea why I was so upset, and that was the problem. This is what I meant when I said in the last episode that I've given up wanting to fix broken men. They have to want to be fixed, or at least acknowledge that there was something that needed fixing. I literally once called him a fuckboy, and he sent me the whole Urban Dictionary definition and pointed out the one thing in the whole definition that didn't apply to him. 'Cause I just want the simple things. I just want you. And proceeded to be angry with me about it for a couple hours. Didn't act like any less of one, so I don't know why he was so mad. I don't need a debutante, just be a tough act to follow. I had done enough work on myself by this point that I realized that I had given all I could to this situation and I was not willing to continue to pursue it. His ego strokes aren't my responsibility, especially if they're not reciprocal. Let's be real that he was always my favorite though. Gotta give credit where it's due. I was locked into him for a really long time. Convinced he was the one. There were a lot of periods of not speaking though, and obviously seeing other people during those times. After a heartbreak and an incident, I called him up because he was comfortable and my relationship with my body was not well at this time. I thought it would make me feel better, but it didn't. It made me feel emptier. And because he had no concern for how hurtful the level of disrespect was, I kind of just felt worse. The year of the incident was a pretty wild time because there was a lot to cope with in general. At first, I didn't understand what I was even feeling enough to know how to start processing it. I was able to identify that I still had a pretty linear way of thinking about it all at the time though, focusing more on the incident itself rather than why I felt the way I did about certain things that I did. What a rabbit hole of self-discovery that was. Turns out, the answer wasn't my miserable attempts at Hoyer and swinging. At the end of the day, the issue I really had to look at was why I would rather talk dirty with random strangers on the internet and panic anytime there would be potential for a meeting. The answer was kind of shocking in that I just didn't actually want to be touched. Like in some cases, a literal visceral reaction. Even though I had, urges and stuff. Directly after the incident, I was more interested in women than men, or couples. I think it would have been less of the case if there were more options in real life rather than having to meet people online though. The thought of a random dude touching me didn't feel as good of an idea when it got close to it as it did in theory. I eventually realized that kind of applied to everyone at the time, though. It ended up being less generalized than I thought that it was. I have to say, though, it was a really good opportunity for reflection. I didn't handle anything that year in a way my current self would be proud of, but I knew I was doing the best I could at the time. As I worked on myself more, I realized it was an intimacy issue, but I knew it hadn't always been there. When I really thought about where it started, it was after a time I'd been injured by a partner, then realizing it happened on quite a few moments that were supposed to be intimate between us. There was just one that stood out in particular. I realized I'm going to continue to feel that way without an intimate connection. My body actually does all sorts of weird shit if there is a poor level of trust and connection there. It's come to the point where I just can't do it. So I'd rather not try than try to force it. Would rather conserve my energy for a more meaningful connection. The funny thing is, because of that, when I heard a story being told by a guy saying he'd order hookers and pay them to leave without doing anything because he'd lose his nerve, a guy like that would have the patience I'd need. I know, sounds weird, but kind of my thing, except without the hookers. Also, as a bonus to that, if he's actually ordered hookers before, then he's the type of guy who probably wouldn't be as bothered by a smear campaign about me being a hooker then, right? See, character traits and life experience. You can find compatible qualities in unexpected places and think a little bit unconventionally. Also, be honest with yourself about your own shortcomings and what kind of partner could bring out a better version of you, but as a person and not a lifestyle upgrade. Someone who can make the mundane moments feel a bit more spectacular, not in some grandiose way, but in a calm through the storm kind of way, or like a I don't like where I'm at, but as long as I'm there with you kind of way. For example, I love banter. A sharp, witty banterer is hard to come by. These days, most are just outright mean for the sake of being mean. It's not clever, it's easy. But a good banter could get you through a week of camping that gets rained out and still make you feel like it was worth the trip. Kind of also to that point, but slightly tangent, but also still on the subject of simple things. When I started what I consider to be my career, I started going for more suit type guys. Now, this is something a lot of people comment on because they don't expect it from a woman, but I find it to be a particularly common response from men of this type, is that they will always comment on my hands being rough. I spent almost 20 years in a labor job, 10 concurrently with an office one, so I've gotten to experience both worlds, which I'm very fortunate for. So although hearing this as much as I do at one point made me feel super conscious about it for a long time, it also got me thinking about it from a different perspective. Yes, my hands are rough, but in most of these cases, theirs aren't. My road was lined with mop buckets, machines, and heavy lifting. Theirs were behind computers and desks. There's nothing wrong with that from a career building perspective at all. Just built different. But I find a lot of men heavily refer to their jobs synonymous with being providers for their families. It's true to an extent, but extends beyond that as well. For example, and this is just a personal one, I've always been kind of an emergency prepper. So when I meet these guys, all I can think of is what are these soft hands going to be able to provide in an emergency situation? Sometimes calluses come in handy because they've already endured some level of stress. Ugh, why can't they say nice diamond hands if that's the case then? It's all a matter of perspective though, because everyone is looking for something different that is a perfect complement to both what they need and want and what they're willing to give in return. This is where I've found thinking of it as a puzzle can be helpful. Many pieces can be on the board, but only a few fit together in a complementary way. The whole complementary thing I think is pretty important too. I've never understood the needing to be exact same. I want someone who's strong in the areas I'm not, skills that I don't have, that sort of thing. It's better for weight distribution within the relationship because you're not able to give 50-50 all the time. In a good partnership, you should be able to carry the load for each other when one is struggling a bit and needs a little bit of help. I've also found not just having sex for the sake of having sex to be helpful too, especially because I do focus on the importance of the energetic body. I started thinking of it more as not wanting to share my energy, and I'm really glad that I did. I think we forget that relationships can be as much energetic bond as a physical one. For two people to connect on an intimate level, it can be a healthy flow of shared energy that energizes both, primarily in the sacral chakra. If that's out of balance, one will drain the other, which can manifest itself in multiple ways. For me specifically, it can show up as something like a writer's block. Actually, that can be true for multiple chakras in regards to relationships, but the more attuned you are to yourself with all of your chakras aligned, the more capacity you're going to have to give to somebody else. And the more attuned you are to each other, the more seamless the flow of energy. That's why I've thought the concept of Tantra would be a great way to overcome some of my own intimacy stuff, because it's more about the connection and energetic flow between people. It's a really cool concept when you think of it like that. But to that point also, if you're sharing that energy with multiple people or bringing things into the boundaries of that connection that aren't attuned to it, or which astral plane it occurs on, there can be varying levels of detriment, but ultimately chips away at the energetic bond. The best example of that would be the partners who end up catching their partners cheating or something because they quote unquote just know. It's a level of detection that there has been a change in the shared energy. If you're well attuned to that energy, you can sense the shift. That's just the best example I can think of, but there are a lot of things that can apply to that as well. It's not even just intimate relationships either. It's more about who you invest your time and energy into. Sometimes blips in the connection can be minor though, so it's important to use discernment and show grace and willingness to work together to re-strengthen it if you feel it weakening a bit. Really, I think most people just want someone who they feel understands them, can see through the mask they show the world, and would be willing to walk with them in the dark in times of fear, as well as share in all the good things. But I say it this way because I think a lot of how we treat others in relationships largely stems from fear. Because sometimes the simplest thing would be someone who knows what we need without having to sift through all of the clutter we're working to cope with within ourselves to explain it to them. I think we view a lot of that as unattainable, but I also think that's because we do focus less on the bond now than we used to. Life is nuanced and everybody's experience is different. Sometimes the simplest thing is support through compassion, builds trust and strengthens bonds, more so than material could. Okay, I think that turned out okay. It is pretty easy to play, but it is quite fast, even though it's not a fast song. But it is fast. Like a lot of the songs that I play, like within a beat of four, there might be two chords. In a lot of these, there can be four chords, so it's just a matter of moving it around. And once you get the hang of it, it's pretty good. It's really good for practicing dexterity like that. I felt more confident playing with two hands today, so I was pretty excited about that. The tab that I was playing was the regular version. It is a good version of the song, but my preferred version is the remix. So if you're going to check out the song, check out both. And other than that, I highly recommend giving it a try. And thanks again for joining me. And until next time, keep the peace and keep rocking on.